Scotland decamped to Charlotte. Is that move a good move? A pre-tournament war of words breaks out with Norway, and we put Scotland's strike force options under the analysis microscope. Hello, I'm Jonathan Sutherland. This is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Tuesday, the 9th of June. And Scotland have arrived at their World Cup base camp.
We've prepared ourselves in the best possible way. I think we've learned from the mistakes of the last major tournaments, and as a group, players, staff, everyone above that, we want to try and eradicate those mistakes and give ourselves no excuses.
Will Charlotte be a champion choice for Steve Clarke's side? And the great debate about Scotland's strikers continues.
What a goal that is! Shea Adams got a second bite of the cherry. Must be! Yes! A goal! Lyndon Dykes! And it's George Hurst who knocks it into the back post. Scotland have got the opener through Lawrence Shankland.
We run through the options up front ahead of the Haiti opener. And who's in the right, who's in the wrong, as a spat erupts between Scotland and Norway. We'll guide you through all the big conversations in Scottish football.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
I am delighted to say this morning we are joined by two great guests. First up, Stephen McGowan, the Herald's football writer at large, living at large in America. But Stephen, not right now. In fact, you arrive in sombre mood slightly because you are in Charlotte and you've made a huge sacrifice for the Scottish Football Podcast.
I have. It's not so much sombre as sober because tonight Charlotte FC, the local football MLS team, laid on a function for Scottish media and for SFA High Hegians. And they were laying on the free bar and the free beer, and Muggins here had to stick to 0% lager. Although I did have some free pizza, Johnny, so it wasn't an entire washout.
Good, well done. Our thoughts are with you at this time, Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah,
thank you very much.
Right.
And what time, just very briefly, we're recording this at 6:30 in the morning in Scotland. What time is it with you in Charlotte?
Yeah, 1:30 in the morning. So that's why if anybody's actually sees the online images of this, it looks like I'm in a Gothic chamber. But it is the middle of the night here, early hours of Tuesday. So I apologise for that.
I'm getting Phantom of the Opera vibes from Charlotte.
It really is.
But,
yeah.
Thanks, Stephen, and we really appreciate your sterling efforts there. That's taken some ironclad willpower. We are also joined this morning by the Partick Thistle legend, Kris Doolan. Kris, good morning to you. It's looking bright and breezy where you are. How are you today?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Jonathan. It's not quite Charlotte here in Kilmarnock, but it's we're ready to go. 6:30 in the morning, we're up, we're ready to talk football. Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Great to have you both with us. And let's kick off with Charlotte, shall we, Stephen? It's been the buzz around the Scotland camp, obviously, for the last 24 hours or so. Well, that, obviously, and this Norwegian spat, which we'll get into in a second. But let's talk about Charlotte. It is this base camp. There's been a big deal made of the move, obviously. Scotland very happy about it by the looks of things. Give us a feel for Charlotte. Where is it exactly and what's it like?
The main thing about it is, Jonathan, it's equidistant between Boston and Miami. So for 2 games, obviously the first 2 games, Scotland will fly up north to Boston, going up there on Friday, I believe, match day -1. For a couple of days, and then we come back here again next week for the base camp, and then back up to Boston again for the Morocco game, back to Charlotte, and then south to Miami. It's a nice, clean city. It's the kind of anti-Glasgow, if you like, really. It's absolutely spotless. It is really good, busy, but not overly busy place to be. I mean, obviously, at the weekend, New Jersey was quite a different proposition. Then they had a bit of a kind of warm-up camp down in Florida last week where the weather was a bit stormy. But no, so far so good. I think the facilities are superb. 52,000 feet of the Atrium Health Performance Centre where Charlotte FC play their football and train. And I think the facilities couldn't really be better. So I think the one thing you would say is that the SFA have done pretty much all they can do to give this team every opportunity to make history and win games. And it's up to them now to go out there and perform.
From the sense you get from the players, Stephen, do they seem absolutely happy with it? And I guess it's just a case of it is a base camp. They'll be jetting off to the matches that they have to play. It's all very convenient and a nice lifestyle for them in these moments where they have to just prepare intently for these huge matches.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to somebody who's inside the camp, and they were saying that the players really don't have anything to do for themselves. Everything is there for them. I think there's something like 45 members of staff, backroom staff, who are looking after their every need, their every whim. And I think the thing with this Charlotte base is, and I think Steve Clark's on record saying this, that when we went to the Euros in Germany, we're based in deepest Bavaria in a place called Garmisch-Partenkirchen, which was lovely, scenic, kind of ski resort, but it's pretty remote. And I don't think there was a great deal of kind of activity for the players to do out with the hotel, even places to have a walkabout, have a coffee or what have you. So I think they wanted something that was a little bit more urban, a bit more happening. And I think Charlotte just about ticks the boxes without being a great party lifestyle. So yeah, I don't think they can have any complaints. I think the players will be happy with this place.
Yes, I do remember actually sharing a pint with your good self, Stephen, in that sleepy Garmisch-Partenkirchen at one point. And I think sleepy is probably the word that would sum it up. Perfectly lovely in the alpine part of Central Europe, Kris Doolan. But I'm sure Charlotte is a wonderful place to be. Kris, in terms of these sorts of decisions, and as Stephen says, he feels that the Scottish FA have gotten this one right. How important is it for the players, would you say, in terms of just having the perfect conditions, or as far as they can be in terms of a training base for this sort of tournament?
Yeah, I think you'd be amazed at the planning that goes into these types of things, Jonathan. That this will have been planned meticulously, where they are. One of the things that struck me, I'm sure at Charlotte, Gary Dicker is assistant manager there, who played for
saw him today, actually, Kris. Yeah, we saw him today. Yeah.
So even just having that inside information in terms of dealing with the heat, dealing with living there, operating there, playing there, coaching there, I think things like that will help. These types of things, in terms of, they don't just pick a hotel for whatever reason. Stephen just mentioned that they like to know what's on round about it. They like to know, can the players go for a walk? Can they go? Where can they go where they're not getting mobbed with TV, or they're not attracted to the towns, the cities? So everything, and even down to what's happening inside the hotel. Where's the meeting rooms? Where do they place them? They almost force the players at times to be sociable. So they put these meeting rooms in areas of the hotel where they have to congregate on the way there. There'll be coffee, there'll be... It's meticulous planning, all to get the best out of them on match day.
Yeah, I mean, the players do seem like quite a sociable bunch. I'm sure there'll be plenty of games of Uno on the go at this moment in time. Stephen, I think I remember last week you were asked the question, how much of a buzz is there in the USA right now ahead of the World Cup? And I think your answer was basically there isn't any buzz. It's now the tournament's just a couple of days away, really, and you are in Charlotte. Has that changed at all?
I think the focus right now is really the NBA Finals in America. I mean, I came back in perfectly sober from a function tonight and put the TV on, and there was the San Antonio Spurs playing against the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden, and that's gripping the country at the moment. 3 games into it, and it's back to 2-1 again after San Antonio won tonight, and that is absolutely dominating the back pages. Now, people are they're aware that there's a FIFA World Cup going on. They ask you what you're doing here, and you say, well, we're here for the World Cup. Say, oh, yeah, but it's a kind of vague kind of awareness. I think it's been a bit of a marketing, probably, I don't know if I want to say a disaster, but it's certainly been marketing laxity, I would say, because, other than seeing a bit of a advertising campaign in a railway platform in New Jersey with Tyler Adams and a Bank of America billboard, very, very little to say that the FIFA World Cup is happening in America. And, as I said last week, I think that well over 50% of people don't really have any plans to watch any games. So maybe as we get closer to the tournament, that's going to change, that's going to improve. But certainly Charlotte is not a World Cup venue, so there's very little here. There was a bit of it in New York. But generally at this stage, I would say still not much buzz at all in Evanston, really.
And Jonathan, I would say that's part of why they're in Charlotte. I would say that almost removing the players from that constant pressure of the tournament itself. Sometimes that will be part of the plan, and that's why they'll stay so far out. Then they'll travel match day -1 and stay closer, because that's when you really feel as a player or as a manager, as a coach, you're now in the pressure of the game and you have to switch your mindset. But the players still have to be able to relax. So you have to move them out of that goldfish bowl, I suppose. And I would say Charlotte's probably another reason that it ticks a box for Scotland as well.
But you're sort of saying, Stephen, that there's not even really a goldfish bowl probably anywhere in America right now. The nation there is sort of shrugging its shoulders a little bit about the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, football was catching on amongst the younger demographic in America, no question about it. I think amongst 18 to 34-year-olds, it is the third biggest sport now, behind American football and behind basketball, which is pretty astonishing when you consider the size of baseball and hockey and so on. But I think across the board, it still hasn't grabbed people. I think it's going to be interesting to see how certain games are supported. I mean, you're thinking about fixtures like Congo against Uzbekistan. You're looking at, let's be honest, Scotland against Haiti. I mean, there's a big Haiti community in the US, but, travelling fans can't come over there for obvious reasons. So, yeah, I think, Infantino has painted the message that they've sold millions of tickets, but the proof will be in the pudding. And I think when the games get underway, I think we'll see a lot of support, obviously, in Mexico. I think we'll see high crowds in Canada. But United States at the moment, not so sure.
What about you, Chris? Have you got the World Cup buzz? Have you got the sticker album out yet? The wall chart?
Yeah, pretty much. I think we all have. I find it very, very surreal that in America there's no atmosphere. I think we've been so excited as a nation, and everybody's talking about it. All the kids going to school, it grips the nation. It's difficult to actually think that it's happening in America and there's no atmosphere yet, but you're just hoping, or I suppose I'm hoping, that when it does kick off, we really see it come to life, because hopefully that's when the basketball finishes, the football starts, and hopefully that's what grips the nation of America, because it certainly gripped the rest of us.
There is nothing that grips the attention, certainly in a Scottish football context, than a slight row. And is slight row the best way to sum this up, Stephen McGowan, this spat across the North Sea between our fellow World Cup hopefuls Norway and Scotland, Steve Clarke being branded unprofessional by his Norwegian counterpart Ståle Solbakken after Scotland cancelled the training ground friendly as both sides prepare for the start of the World Cup. It was quite scathing, not just from the Norwegian manager, but also some of his staff, some of his players about this. They're usually quite a mellow bunch, a very polite bunch, the Scandinavians. They've really moved on from the days of the Vikings. They are the politest people you'd ever meet. Have Scotland not been polite enough with them?
I think John McGinn put it best. John McGinn did the media today, and he said, look, Scotland has to look out for themselves. They have to look out for their own interests. I think Steve Clarke effectively decided after the Bolivia game, when they had a good run out, he used the majority of his squad, did a good result, that he felt the team were cooked enough. And obviously, I think the Billy Gilmour situation spooked a lot of people. It spooked the squad, spooked the manager. They didn't want a repeat of that. I mean, before the last 2 Euros, Scotland have lost a couple of players before both tournaments. So didn't want a repeat of that. I think there's an understanding of why Norway would be hacked off. I mean, both countries are in North Carolina preparing. They'd arranged this bounce game, a training ground bounce game today behind closed doors for fringe players to get a bit of a run out and get some legs moving. And Scotland pulled the plug on that on Saturday afternoon, I think. I mean, the game, it was a bit unfair to criticise Steve Clarke because, I mean, he wasn't really involved in the planning. It was the kind of the operations departments, if you like. And they arranged the game and they cancelled the game. But it was obviously a big deal for the Norwegians. They really wanted the game to happen. They're disappointed. But, you can't really blame Scotland if they decide that they just don't really feel the need for this game. It's too big a risk. So I think it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, bit of a 24-hour story. I think it will pass. You just wonder whether there's some potential later in the tournament for Scotland and Norway to play. We'd take that though, wouldn't we? We would take that scenario if it came to pass.
Yeah, the grudge final between Scotland and Norway. I can't wait for that. It'll be great. Kris, Norway's team manager, not the head coach, if you like, the manager. They kind of organise a lot of the team logistics and things like that. Obviously, Breda Hangeland, who played for Fulham, people might remember. He's not happy either. Said they'd based their World Cup preparations on the closed doors friendly for many months, he says. And he said it is embarrassing to cancel it a couple of days before. Do you understand the Norwegians' anger, or are they being a little bit overdramatic?
Yeah, I think it's a bit overdramatic. I agree with Stephen. I don't think there's a lot in it. I think this happens at club level a lot. If they're arranging behind closed doors games, things change, plans change, things within the squad. The manager's job is to protect the herd. And I think that's what Steve Clarke's doing. I think after the Bolivia game, he got everything out that game that he was looking for. As a manager, he got the performance, he got the goals, the clean sheet, no injuries. I think to just go and push for another game, which isn't get any supporters there, it's behind closed doors. I don't think you're always doing is running the risk of losing players, and I think he's probably made the right decision here. Yes, we totally understand that Norway be preparing for the game. I think it's dramatic to say they've been preparing for months for a behind closed doors game against Scotland, but it is part of their preparation, so we have to be aware of that. But they're preparing for the tournament the same way as everybody else is. I just think everybody puts plans in place, and John McGinn was right. You have to look after yourself, and football is very, very much like that in terms of looking after your own team and your own players. And I just think plans change within training camps. Plans change daily. They change weekly. They'll change by the hour at times. But the manager's job is to make these decisions and make the right decisions. And I think he's made the right one at this point.
It's funny, actually, because there were a couple of Norwegian journalists actually made the journey to the Scottish training camp today to ask us questions. They sat in the front row, and I think the SFA knew they were coming. And John McGinn kind of disarmed it a bit by saying, well, look, if you'd lost Odegaard, if you'd lost Haaland, then you would be spooked as well. And that kind of took the wind out of their sails, given the answer they were looking for. But that's really the importance of Billy Gilmour. I mean, he is a senior player and an influential player for Scotland these days, and I think that really did probably put the wind up a lot of people when they lost him after that game against Curaçao. So, look, Steve Clarke doesn't. His first obligation is to his squad, to making history with Scotland. It's not to Norway. So he makes his decision, and he's entitled to do that.
Stephen, the one thing I thought about actually when I heard about this row is Stally Solbakken, and he was manager of Wolverhampton Wanderers. I think it was season 2012-2013. Steve Clarke was manager of West Bromwich Albion 2012-2013. Now, they're big, big rivals. I kind of wondered to myself, is there some history here? That might be interesting. I guess you didn't speak to Steve Clarke yesterday. Obviously, it was John McGinn, but I don't think they were in the same division at that time. I think West Brom were actually in the Premier League, and Wolves were in the Championship. But I thought, is there something there? No idea. idle speculation, absolutely. I'm sure it will just drift into being forgotten about this Stushy as the week rolls on, but we shall see. In the meantime, let's talk about the football, because Bolivia was obviously fantastic. The strike force, Shea Adams, Lawrence Shankland, a lot of attention on that Kris Doolan. Obviously, they got 3 goals between them against the Bolivians, and it's led a lot of people to think, should we just start with this strike force against Haiti? Now, you are a striker of renown, you're a coach, you've been a manager. We've asked you to kind of break down Scotland's striking options. How do you see it? How would you weigh things up with all the striking options Steve Clarke has at his disposal ahead of this huge game against Haiti? How do you see it?
I think, looking at the options, I think they've all been chosen specifically to bring different characteristics to the squad. And going back to Steve Clarke being the manager, he has to be able to change things up. He doesn't want 4 strikers all the same, and I think he's chose well. I think the 2 boys, Shankland and Shea Adams, to use a phrase, they've timed their run well, because they've just scored the goals in Bolivia, or against Bolivia. That's got everybody wanting them to play together. They've showed that they can play together. So I think they're the 2 we'll start with. I believe it's Shankland and another. For me, it doesn't matter if you're 6'5" or 5'6", you need to be able to score goals. If you're the striker, everybody expects you to score goals. They're hoping to score goals. I think with Shankland in the team, we only have to create 1 or 2 really good chances, and he's the guy who can finish. If you start maybe one of the other strikers who aren't as prolific, the message to the rest of the squad is that we have to create a bit more chances. We have to create better chances, which might not be as easy. There's not going to be any easy games. I think against Haiti, the manager will want strikers who are scoring regularly, who are on fire, and play them, because as a striker, confidence is what breeds more confidence.
Kris, in terms of the options along with Lawrence Shankland, if you like, if it is going to be a front 2 against Haiti, which I think most people assume it probably will be, you're looking at Shea Adams. He's got to probably start, given he scored 2 goals in his last games. But the other realistic option would probably be Lyndon Dykes. I think a lot of people think there's quite a big difference between the 2 of them. Obviously, Dykes is much taller, but I remember speaking to Scott McTominay about Shea Adams, and he talks about how Shea Adams is a tank. He's a physical specimen as well. How would you analyse the differences, if you like, between Shea Adams and Lyndon Dykes in terms of what they would bring you on the pitch?
Yeah, I think there's stark contrasts between the 2 of them. I think Shea Adams is probably your all-round type of striker. He's powerful, he's quick, he'll run channels, he'll run in behind, he's very strong. So in terms of being an out-and-out striker, he's probably the best all-rounder, because he's got a bit of everything. He gets some goals, as we've seen against Bolivia. But I'll always come back to the fact that, being prolific, as a Lawrence Shankland, you need a prolific striker in your team. Every other team, every other nation will have a prolific goal scorer probably within their ranks. Shankland is ours. So it's who best partners Shankland. I think when you look at Lyndon Dykes, Lyndon's more of a target man. He's very, very dominant in the air. He's very strong in the air, but he's a target. That's why, I don't think as a striker you can do both. I don't think you can be a target man, protect the ball, flick balls on, and also be in the 6-yard box to score. It's probably going to be somebody else. So, and I think that's to the detriment then of the types of target man, the Lyndon Dykes, even to Shea Adams, running channels, using a lot of energy down those sides. But the goals are in the middle. And ultimately the ball will come back into the middle and you need a goal scorer in there. That's why I'll always come back to the fact that Shankland for me has to start. And it's who best partners Lawrence. But in terms of the 2 contrasts, I can see them being used in different games. I can see against Haiti starting Adams and Shankland, because it's about goals. It's about, they've just off the back of the Bolivia game, the confidence. But then Morocco will be a completely different kettle of fish. Maybe then you look at Lyndon Dykes, possibly, but to hold the ball up, to bring us up the pitch a bit. But it's also what they can bring for other players around the team. I think if you play a Lyndon Dykes, you're probably looking more at a John McGinn, McTominay scoring, because they're the guys who get forward. Whereas if you've got Shankland in the team, he's probably going to be the one that finishes it for you. And Shea Adams can be a massive part of that to help Lawrence Shankland for me.
Obviously, Ross Stewart, George Hurst, probably seen as the backup option. Stephen McGowan, would you fully expect Shea Adams and Lawrence Shankland to lead the line against Haiti?
I'd be astonished if he didn't, really. I think they made that decision for Steve Clarke against Bolivia and against Curacao as well, although Lyndon Dykes was good then. I think the interesting thing, what people are discussing here, is that if you do play the two strikers, which looks highly likely, is what is the impact going to be on the midfield? Because you will be going down. I mean, quite often we've seen 5 good midfielders playing with just one striker, and now we're probably going to see a 4-4-2. And the problem is that midfield is so strong for the Scotland squad. And we saw John McGinn starting on the bench against Bolivia. You have to expect that John McGinn will come in. But amazingly, there's a scenario where there's a question mark over that. Because if you look at that first half on Saturday, you had Christie, you had McTominay, you had Lewis Ferguson, you had Ben Gannon Doak, and they were exhilarating. I mean, they were electric. So I would still think John McGinn would come back in, given the player, the calibre of player he is and the influence he has in the team. But then your question is, who drops out of the midfield if you do play with the two strikers? Lewis Ferguson, I think you probably need his protection in front of the back four. Ryan Christie, well, you'd be reluctant to leave him out given what he did on Saturday. So there is still a selection dilemma for Steve Clarke. I'm just not sure if it's the front two. I think that's settled now.
Yeah, we talked about the midfield yesterday. Robbie Nielsen asked him, who would you leave out if John McGinn came back into the side, as you would expect? And it was a difficult question for Robbie to answer, absolutely. And I think it is for all of us. It is a tricky one. A good problem for Scotland to have, you'd have to say. But it'll be interesting to see how Steve Clarke tackles that. Before we go, just some very quick-fire questions, just to kind of, I guess, noise you up, I think, a little bit, Stephen, which is a bit of a shame because you're just about to go to bed, presumably, as well. So this is going to get your
There's
brain
no
rattling.
about it. I can assure you I am going to bed the minute this finishes. Yeah.
Okay, I want one-word answers, or as close as you can manage to these questions, and I'm going to go to both of you, starting with Stephen. Stephen, how many points will Scotland get?
3.
Kris?
4.
Who will be our top scorer? Stephen?
Shankland.
Kris?
Shankland.
Who is winning the World Cup? Stephen?
France.
Kris?
France.
Who is your dark horse? Stephen?
Alternative to that would be Spain.
Oh, are you calling that a dark horse?
That's not a dark horse, is it? Not a dark horse. I'll tell you who I fancy to do okay in this World Cup without necessarily winning it, and that's Japan. I think they can go further.
That's who I would say, Stephen. That would be the dark horse for me, would be Japan.
Wow, interesting. Okay. And finally, which of the big guns will flop? Stephen?
Germany.
Kris?
Tough one. Brazil.
Let's hope so.
When they lose 3-0 to Scotland, I think was what Kris was.
I'm just trying to put some energy out there for the Scotland team.
I was going to say, were either of you itching to describe Scotland as the dark horse?
No.
Oh, come on.
I'd like to. I mean, if you'd like to, you'd love to. I mean, listen, I think it's interesting, this whole threshold thing, because with the third place finishers, 3 points and goal difference of -2, they think the model suggests will be enough. So that means you really need to try and beat Haiti by a couple of goals and then keep a really respectable goal difference against Morocco and against Brazil. Not easy, but doable. But it does absolutely require a win against Haiti in the opening game. I think for me, the entire tone of the World Cup will be set by that game. It's almost like a real cup final in itself.
I've heard Norway and Switzerland described as dark horses. If they can be dark horses, Kris, I think Scotland can be as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I think everybody's behind the. This is the best squad we've seen, that I've certainly seen. I think we've got real top players, and I think everybody's just so excited. Should we get out the group? I think we'll get out the group. I genuinely believe that there's enough in this team and in this squad to get us out the group, and I think that's what makes it so exciting. Now, that would be like a win in itself, getting out the group stage.
It certainly would. Listen, guys, thank you very much indeed, especially to you, Stephen, for staying up and staying sober. It has been inspirational, frankly.
Madness, more like.
And Kris, thanks to you as well. Remember, there are new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast every day. Don't miss out. Have push notifications turned on in your phone and subscribe on BBC Sounds. Scottish football, the gift that keeps on giving. Thanks for listening.
It's petty, it's ill-informed.
Are President Trump's cuts having an adverse effect on research?
It's pandemonium.
What number's that in the periodic table?
PD, number 47. I don't know.
I've done the shooting clays before. The longer you do it, the sorer obviously it gets.
When Craig said there he'd been shooting the clays, I imagined him out a back line. Somebody's washing, you know.
William Shatner, his secretary, contacted me to say, when Bill has a question now and again, can he contact you? And then one time he called me up and he wanted to know, David, what is a photon? I'm thinking, this is incredible. Captain Kirk wants to know what a photon is, you know.
I once met a guy who referred to a globe as a ball map. A ball map.
A ball map.
Look at the ball map. What we normally do is spin the ball map and we see where we go on holiday.
The Off the Ball podcast, available every Monday on BBC Sounds.